You got it wide enough to carry both of us?
Yeah, I did. I'm hoping.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to drag out of me now?
Well, we had a little while we were shooting today. Well, I wanted to. We've been shooting for a couple sessions now,
Mm-hmm.
and I came to the realization that this process is something that we're pretty much doing together. And you keep saying it's well.
Maybe we would put this where it's
Maybe just put it right
equidistant.
between us.
That's fine.
That's a good thing. Actually, yeah, put it down there. And let me see. Say stuff again. Let me get your levels.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing. This is my actual voice. Really is. Believe it or not. Human.
I think we'll be all right that way.
Okay.
I
think I'm
well,
gonna-
it was pointed
I'm gonna
away
put
from it
this-
was pointed away from you, so
Oh, is it directional?
it's a little directional.
We'll put it down the way you want it. We'll put this tape. Oh, does it have to be up?
That would be the best, I think. Let's go this. There. Okay.
No, as long as
So
let's just to be sure we don't screw things up. I'll get this off me because all I got to do is make a move and it's going to be all over the floor.
put it down on the floor, just right in front there. Just don't kick it.
This is falling over again.
There we go. Anyways, well, this was a good. Everyone could see now that this
What
is
trials and
this is-
tribulations.
This is a co-production.
Yeah.
This is you keep saying that it's that I'm the director, but in fact, you've brought in a lot of ideas to this, obviously, and have made it as much, as important to you, and you've made it
Yeah.
feel like
Well-
a real thing for yourself as well as for me.
The thing is, movies are very close to stills in a lot of ways, as far as composition and so forth are
Right.
concerned, and what will interest the viewing public and so on. So I suppose I would contribute something because I spent all those years in the business. But I'd rather this be your project.
And it is in
So
that
I don't have
sense.
to
I
take-
mean, yeah, and it is better that way. I mean, obviously, but just as example for everyone,
Yeah.
you use your idea to have our little background lighting here, and it looks wonderful, as I'm sure everyone will be able to tell.
I hope they like it.
And you can just see by us trying to figure out this microphone that we're doing everything together on this.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's what it should be.
Anyways, my point being that when I was thinking and mulling over this whole project and whatever you want to call it, I kind of envisioned it just me always sitting behind the camera and just firing questions at you and having certain making it conversational,
Yeah.
certainly, but never really seeing me on camera because that's not really my thing to do. I know consider myself a documentary filmmaker, and a lot of documentary filmmakers show themselves in the film that they're making.
Yeah.
To make it more personal for the viewer, maybe, or just their own. That's their style or whatever, and that's not really my style. I don't feel like. And but I realized what I'm saying is for this project, I realized since we've been through a couple sessions already, that it would just be more natural in a lot of the situations to have me
Both
be in
in
it.
there. Yeah, I think it is.
And one of for several reasons, and one that I want to get into right now, is for like just what happened while we were going through this session. I mean, I like the idea of we're getting together to do this together, and I think that's something that's gonna carry this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
And as much as I wanted to do this oral history, and I think that's what I'm trying to say. I'm as I'm talking, I'm kind of coming to realizations, and that's what I'm trying to put into words is the fact that before I always thought of this as an oral history. This project was just going to be your oral history.
Yeah. Well,
Well, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, a few hours of one mug in front of the camera can get pretty tiresome.
Yeah.
And to have two mugs, that helps a little bit, as bad as they are. but
Admittedly.
and it's a change of pace too. I mean, where you got one face and then bing, now you got two faces, and then probably back to one or something, whatever the case
Right.
might be as we go on. At least there's something to, some little change of pace in there that would kind of keep the person's interest aroused.
Right. And following that vein, I still consider this an oral history piece, but I like the idea of this is our project, we're doing it together,
Yeah.
and as we do it, things are going to happen. We get interrupted, et cetera, because we're doing it together, and it's
Yeah.
not like we're taking time out of our lives to do this. We're just doing it, we're fitting it into our schedules to do it, essentially. And because of that, we still have interruptions, and disruptions or whatever
Well,
else.
This is not a classic of perfection. That's
No,
not the point.
and that's not.
I mean,
that's exactly right. It's not
if
the
it's
point.
our relatives that looks at this, and believe me, there won't be anybody else that'd be interested. they would probably get a bigger kick out of the boners that we pull than anything else because
That's right.
because that's the way we are.
Exactly. And I've realized this especially in our set today, or
Yeah.
our session today. I left the camera rolling for a while you talked to Nancy on the phone, and I wish I would have kept it rolling a little bit when your friend called. I didn't. I cut it off on that.
What'd you do to hear? Could you hear that?
Well, you still had your
Oh, I
mic
still
on,
had it on. Yeah, didn't I?
so I could hear it, but I didn't roll it on that, which
Oh my gosh!
I-
I've got to be over there at 3:30. We can't forget that.
oh
Well,
well.
it's only 1:30 now. So
Yeah, we're
in
not
good
going to be here
shape.
that long. There you go. Another example. We're rolling here. You can't be talking about this on the
Oh,
camera.
excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm not used to having
There
the
you
thing
go.
poked in
Every
my
time I
face.
say something, you prove my point in graphic detail, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because then this will work. But and then a friend from across the street,
Yeah. Mike.
Mike. I just forgot his. I wanted to say Gary for some reason. Mike came and we were interrupted, and I told you afterwards that we kept it rolling during
Yeah.
that because I didn't know what was going to happen, but that was kind of it. Just all kind of came into my head at the same time that what's going to be interesting is not just your oral history. Although
Yeah.
your oral history is interesting, don't get me wrong.
Oh, come on. I'm beginning to wonder.
But that as much your oral history, your everyday life for posterity purposes are just as interesting, I would think. I mean, you have children and grandchildren and great grandchildren all over
Don't tell
the world,
Don't tell the
basically.
viewer. They don't know it yet.
Yeah.
We'll spring that on
Yeah.
them later.
Okay. But they don't get to spend the time with you that I do and that I have.
Yeah.
I mean, to get really personal,
Yeah.
I've probably spent as much time with you as any of your grandchildren, I imagine.
Yeah. Particularly
Because
in recent years.
because
Since you've
that
come
we've
down here.
lived so close to each other
Yeah,
in the last
that's
10,
right.
15 years, however long you've been here.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I was in high school, I came and stayed with you all the time.
Yeah.
And we worked on the backyard together, and we'd done everything together.
That's right.
And since I came back from school, then I've been able to spend definitely a more amount of time than I imagine most of your other grandchildren.
That's true. Yeah. We've spent more time together than any of the others. And I've enjoyed every bit of it. You're a
And
good companion.
my point being that this project is kind of an extension of our relationship in the fact that I've always been interested in you and your life and have always enjoyed your company
Mm-hmm.
and realized that all of your grandchildren, is all I can speak for because that's what my level is. You know, I don't know about, your children obviously are a different level than me, and your
They're a little
great grandchildren
older
are a different level than me too because they have their own
Yeah.
grandparents. And so my point being that this project is something that could be shared by anyone on the same level as myself,
Yeah.
which is what what interests me is the things I talk to you about what interests me and what is intriguing to me about what happened in your life and things like that, in the hopes that others will have similar interests of mine, and that other people
Well,
will want to hear
I think
the same
there's,
things.
I think all of, particularly my grandchildren, whose lives were somewhat remote from mine, time-wise. I mean, you expressed an interest on my early life as a child because it was so different. So there's that great difference that
Right.
makes it interesting, perhaps, if I
Right.
can keep it interesting as I relate it. That's the problem. But
Well, that'll be partly my job is to make sure that
yeah,
I mean, if it's well, I'll be asking you questions about things that I'm interested in. So I'll
That's
make
right.
sure that I'm getting what I'm interested in the hopes that other people will have at least relatively similar interests
Mm-hmm.
to my own.
well, I think the questions that you've asked me so far are questions that would arise from any of the other viewers that watch it. I think they're all legitimate and bring out something of my life that could be of interest. So where do we go from here?
Well,
Where did we leave off?
my point being, I keep saying my point being because I just follow this train of thought and I
Okay.
ramble and ramble. But and I wonder where I get that from.
I don't know. I haven't the slightest idea.
My point being that as our project, I wanted it to be the viewer's project as well. So they get to see and feel and be there throughout the whole process. The interruptions,
Yeah,
the setting up, etc.
The more
whole
interruption, the
thing.
more lifelike it is.
And it has a better sense of here and now.
Yeah.
Because it is here and now, even though, in a lot of ways, I mean, obviously we're talking about your oral history and creating images in our minds of things past and all that kind of thing. We are still in the here and now, and the realities of the day-to-day life don't change regardless of what we put
True.
on the camera.
Yeah.
And that came home to us in a big way during the session when Mike came over and we heard on camera, although I don't think we got it in the picture, that he had just lost his job.
Yeah.
And
It's a little piece of human interest.
it is, and it works two ways. And the one way I'll talk about in a minute. The other way was what I was just talking about. The fact that despite the fact that we're doing this and we're doing this project and we both feel it's very important, and I know there's people that feel it's even more important than maybe you and I think it is, like my mom, for example.
Yeah.
It still has its place in our lives that are happening right now, and it has relevance. And well, I'm just putting it in its relevance to what happens in other people's lives, for example, that are going on at the time. And it just all is beginning to feel very personal, and that's why I think that I like this situation of.
Should work out.
Yeah. But going to my other point, I'm also talking a lot to give your voice a rest, by the way.
Is that the reason?
That's what I'm saying myself. Mike came over and found out he lost his job, and he is a computer systems analyst or something like that.
Well, analyst would be part of the thing. He's a repairman. He's the one that fixes them, diagnoses them, finds out what's wrong with them, and much the same as the doctor is to a person, you know.
And he worked for a unnamed, we won't name
Yeah.
whatever he,
Well, as a matter of
whoever
fact,
he
I don't
worked
know the
for.
name. It's a rather large computer repair place. It does work for big corporations and so forth. Keeps all their equipment in working order and everything else. And
So
he was one of the operators over
okay,
there.
so the company he worked for maintains the computer systems for large corporations
right.
and things like that.
Prior to that, Mike was in charge of that very same thing for one of the big banks here in town before they, or it was a savings and loan, I think. Because when the savings and loan went kaput, why, so did his job. But he had a big job there. He had all of the branches and everything else, computers. He was in charge of keeping all those things in repair. And so he lost that job because saving his loans went to the wall.
Right.
And then he got a job with another repair place, which finally was bought out by this one. So he's been with this one for a couple of years or more. So it was rather surprising that he's suddenly out of a job.
Which brings us this. I want to talk, maybe I don't know if I want to say philosophically, but at least more in terms of our ideas rather than factual things. But obviously, your perspective is much more vast than mine, because you've lived through
Many more years.
many more years, first of all, and many more work type experiences and everything else. But just give your feelings about corporate America, how America has developed as far as business sense goes. From, I mean, obviously you were 17, 18, you know, in 1930 when the Depression hit.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, you know, I guess it's...
Well, 29 it hit. I was 17 years old.
And that's
1929.
was that when the stock market crashed.
That's the big crash in 29.
And then in 31, 32 is when all the banks started closing.
Yeah, I think
that
it
right?
was 32 or 33. I can't remember exactly. But the entire 30 years, the next decade from 29, decade and a few years, we didn't really get over the Depression until Europe, then at war, started, and particularly England, demanded tools to fight the war with. And we were able to give them to them, and we got into that. And that surge of business drew us out of the Depression. And then we kept getting more of it because France needed our stuff too, and Russia needed our stuff after Hitler declared war on Russia. So that was the impetus that got us out of the Depression. If it wasn't for the war, the chances are of the Depression going on another 5 or 6 years at least.
Right.
Because it was far from other. 39 before all of this started, we were still deep in the Depression. But
Well, my question being, how have you seen the face of America as far as the working man goes through the years? Because you have the unique perspective of having worked before the Depression. You were earning, man, like you said, you worked for your grandpa, granted, but you worked just like any of his workers, I assume, before the Depression.
Yeah.
So you have had the experience of having worked a normal man's job before the Depression, and then obviously then you
Well,
lived through the Depression, and then you And then following the Depression in the last 50 years, you also worked.
The condition of the working stiff has improved hundreds-fold since then. For example, like you say, Gramp paid me as a adult workman, even when I was 15 years old. And so I know what those adult workmen were getting and how much they could buy with it and everything else, which wasn't very much, but surprisingly much when you consider what $20 will buy you now.
Right.
But $20 was the wage that Gramps' men got for a week's work, 40 weeks, 50 cents an hour. And that is all they got. I mean, there was no unemployment compensation. There was no health benefits, nothing of that nature. I mean,
no paid vacation.
The only thing they got for what work they did was that hourly wage, and that's all. If they'd break an arm, that was tough. Only through the goodness of their heart would an employer send them to the doctor or something. There was no obligation to do so back in those days. You just looked out for yourself. I had an example of that. One of my friends' father, working on a construction job when they built the big bank in Davenport, had his arm cut off right at the wrist, or his wrist, yeah, his hand cut off. And they gave him $100 or something like that, and told him to get himself fixed up, and he was out of work. He just couldn't work, and he never did get any work of any kind because he only had one hand left. But these days, why, you get all kinds of compensatory benefits.
Right.
That was never there. And then furthermore, hours. Well, no, we were working 8 hours a day, but just shortly before that, they were 10 and 12 hours a day. Gramp, through most of his work, worked 10 and 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and that wasn't unusual. Everybody did. So the benefits today for a working man is so much better. I mean, the equipment, there was so much manual labor years ago. I mean, we used to heist all those cement blocks up from one scaffold to another, manually, one at a time. Now they got a big crane that just takes the whole thing up there and drops it off, like roofing, for example. They put all the roofing right up on top, just like that. That was all done by hand. You carried up a ladder on your shoulder. And I carried hod for Gramp up on my shoulder. Hod, you know what
I don't know hod.
a hod is a thing that you carry on here that has a mortar in it for laying. That's the way to get the mortar up on there. You put it in the hod and you carry it on your shoulder, and then you dump it off on the hod, on the mortar board up there.